Good afternoon, everybody. This is the December meeting of the Community Development Meeting. I'm John Strand, your chair. If we could, let's just run through who's in attendance so we all know who's participating, and we'll start with my left in the room, then go virtually.
Tim Mahoney, Mayor of Fargo.
Feel free to chime in. Start with you, Sam.
Sam McDonald, member at large.
Quit being bashful.
Thomas Hill, United Way of Cass Clay.
Matthew Pike, Fargo Housing.
John Gunkelman, Fargo Planning Commission.
Mark Puppy, Home Builders Association.
Good afternoon. This is Mike Redlinger, Assistant City Administrator, City Staff.
Dan Enixon, member at large.
Jill Manette, City of Fargo staff.
Don't you two have to introduce yourselves too? John wanted everybody introduced.
Let's go over to the staff next.
Tia Braseth, City of Fargo Planning.
Miranda Wolf, City of Fargo Planning.
Aaron Nelson.
Linda Clevey, I'm online only.
Thanks, Linda. And Aaron Nelson, we just caught you there, and Nicole Crutchfield is just walking into the room. Is there anybody we missed? All righty, we'll go on to the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
It actually has approved minute and October minutes, if that would be okay, Commissioners.
Let's do that both at the same time. Approve the agenda and the minutes. We have a motion by the mayor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay? Okay, we'll continue with this agenda, and the minutes will be posted. Don't know if anybody has any public comment. Tia, has anybody signed up for anything? Nobody's in the room. We'll go on to our next item. And by the way, thank you all for participating today. This is our final meeting of the year. It's been one heck of a year, and we'll all look back at 2020 someday and go, wow, wasn't that something to go through that? But thank you all for making the time for this. We'll go to number 3, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion update with Michael Redlinger, Assistant City Administrator.
Good afternoon, committee members. I'm happy to discuss this item, and I'll just provide a brief update and happy to answer any questions that you might have as I finish up. Last night at the City Commission meeting, we provided an update to the City Commission about the timeline and our job description for the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Prior to that, we visited with the Native American Commission on December 3rd, and we are also going to be visiting with the Human Relations Commission on December 17th, just to talk about next steps in our recruitment for this really important position. This is one that we have sought a good deal of input, from these committees. We're certainly inviting input that this committee has as well, as it relates to the draft job description that's in your packet today. And just again, also talk about where we go from here. What we're going to do is post this up. We're going to be conducting a local, regional, and national search. We're going to be providing this announcement to several different job posting websites across the country. And we're hoping that we solicit a really good amount of interest in the position. The one thing that we're also going to do is include members from the Native American Commission and Human Relations Commission in a selection committee process. So in addition to the mayor, Commissioner Arlette Preston, Bruce Grubb, and myself from administration, as well as a representative from the planning department, we're going to have community representatives assist us in selecting the candidate that we feel is really the best fit for this brand new position in the city of Fargo. And so what I'd be happy to do is answer any questions that you might have, but we are very excited about this position. We're looking forward to getting this underway, and we hope by the end of February, perhaps early March, we have somebody in place and someone meeting this committee and meeting Human Relations and Native American Commission for the first time. So we're excited about that, and it's going to be a busy winter of activity. So I'll leave it at that. I'm happy to answer any questions the committee has with me this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Anybody have any follow-up or feedback questions for Michael?
Chairman?
Yes.
Thomas? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Thomas.
Thomas Hill, and then I'll go to the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to butt in. Question on I think in some of the drafts I had seen of the proposed job description, will this position be a contract position, or is it now slated in a different format where it will be a full-time city position? And just wondering, Michael or anyone, if you can provide clarification on benefits or how that will be structured under the city department, and who will this person answer to?
Absolutely. Thanks for the question, Thomas. This will be a contract position for a year. And then what we're going to do is evaluate where we're at the end of the first year of the position, see if we want to make any modifications or changes, but it will be a benefited full-time position. So you think about a 2,080-hour type individual, but we want to leave some flexibility and some latitude to open it up again at the end of that 1 year. If we're finding the fit is there with that candidate and we're liking where it's going, we'll certainly stick with the program. But if we want to add things to the job description or make some changes at that time, we wanted to make sure that we tried this out for a while first. So we thought a contract position allowed us to do that, but it will be a benefited position. And this is one that is not unlike other positions that have started out in the city organization as contracted, converted into full-time regular positions funded in the budget. So we're going to evaluate that for the 2022 budget, but for the time being, we did get the contract in. It was one of just a handful of FTEs approved in the 21 budget in what otherwise was a very, very difficult budget year for us, very tight. But it's one that we'll start here. We'll see where we go. We're really excited about the candidate potentials out there. We've been introduced to several organizations, and just a credit to the Native American Commission too for giving us another couple of organizations that we can reach out to for potential candidates to solicit interest. And so I think that we're going to be most interested to see who steps forward, and there may be others that have been kind of watching us from afar that we're not even aware of today that could be interested in this work. So very much looking forward to it, and you'll hear more about it. We'll come back to this committee and brief on this too as we move forward with the process. So thanks for the question.
Thomas, that answers your question, okay? Okay, now Mayor Mahoney.
So this is a new position for the city of Fargo, and of course, Mike's talking about our budget last year. What we tried to do is not add too many people in the regular quell, but this is a contract could go on and be a permanent position. I think Arlette Preston and John Strand have visited with me as well as what their vision of this position is. And we're a little bit in discovery. We want to see how it works. We may find we have a lot of work to do as a community and as a city in all the different areas, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So Commissioner Strand in particular, he and I have talked about is we're not quite sure all with the breadth of what will happen, but this position will be in the mayor's office and we'll be working with the commissioners as well. So as Mike talked about it, we're very excited about this position. Sometimes you'll discover new things as you go through it and redefine the position, but we feel that it would be very active with Community Development Committee. A lot of things are happening lately, and sometimes as mayor, I feel we sometimes don't get all of the information from the neighborhoods or people or what's going on. And I think this gives us another person to step in a position to help make sure everybody's heard and that we are cognitive of deficits we may have as a city or policies or different areas. So no, I think this is going to be a really great addition to the city of Fargo.
Thank you, Mayor. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Welcome, Melissa Brandt, to the meeting. We see you joined us. Thank you. I'd like to join the mayor too in acknowledging you, Mayor Mahoney, for taking the lead in this movement. Fargo is becoming a bigger city, and the world has come to us in ways that maybe they didn't anticipate decades or hundreds of years ago in the past. But we're really a diverse demographic here, and this position, in my opinion, will be a real valuable gap-filling position for all of us. And then you look at community development, we deal with poverty, we deal with homelessness, we deal with a lot of topics that get down into the into the core of our citizenry, and that we see the diversity there. So challenging us to acknowledge that diversity and stepping up to equity, and also including everybody all the time, will be a really great step forward for Fargo. So Mayor, thank you for taking Fargo down this path. Anybody else have anything for Michael or the Mayor? Michael, thank you for sharing that with us and for your role in this. We'll go to item number 4 with Tia and HUD updates.
Good afternoon, everybody. Are you able to see the screen on your end? I'm assuming I can't see it on my end. It should say HUD program updates December 2020.
There you go.
Okay, there you go. All right, so this is just a brief update. I'd like every time that I'm in front of you guys to just give you an update of where we're at with our HUD programming. So you've been hearing us talk about the 5-year plan for quite some time now, and with COVID, it was delayed to August 2021 for a due date, and so we are utilizing some of that time, of course not all of it, to respond. So right now, we are looking at these 4 goals and priorities. They're similar to the last 5-year plan, but a little bit more carved out. And again, these are in draft format, so we will be going through a short public comment period, but certainly if there's anything you see here today that you think you might want to add to or comment on, we would certainly love to hear any feedback that you have. But of course, we've been hearing about affordable housing in our community, and it's pretty much the case nationwide. So affordable rental and homeowner housing. There are a lot of needs out there for both the multifamily rental type and single family home ownership. And what we heard in our public outreach this time around was that our community would like to see more housing dedicated for vulnerable populations, such as those experiencing domestic violence, maybe have some criminal background history, seniors, of course, and large families, small families. So there's specific populations that people would like to see some of that housing targeted toward. So we'll certainly be thinking about that as we see proposals each and every year through the next 5 years. Another one that you're hearing a lot about right now, specifically related to COVID, is ending and preventing homelessness. This is another vulnerable population that needs housing and healthcare. So there are a lot of different categories that could land under ending and preventing homelessness, including outreach, mobile outreach healthcare, housing assistance, prevention and diversion programs like Presentation Partners is doing, and Sendica, and harm reduction, homeless initiatives. There's just a lot of different options that could fall under this relatively vague category, and we would like to keep it that way. Neighborhood revitalization, that could be anything from public facility improvements, pocket parks, working with kids in a neighborhood, although that could fall under youth programming under the next goal too, but that is also a relatively vague category. We could do public infrastructure items under that too and help people save on special assessment costs, particularly in the low to moderate income area neighborhoods. And then targeted services for low income families and individuals. Certainly most of the funding that we have to spend our time with is on low income families and individuals. So 70% of our funding has to be spent in that category. So we heard a lot of these bullets that you see under number 4 here as being pretty significant needs in the Fargo-Moorhead community. And we would like to be thinking about those as proposals come again for the next 5 years. So mental health and substance use programs, youth programs, street outreach, poverty reduction programs, and transportation initiatives. So here's just a quick timeline for the 5-year plan. We're going to do a 10-day public comment period. That is not as long as the one you would typically see, which is 30 days, but HUD has allowed us during the COVID pandemic to drop that down to 5 days. But we added another 5 days onto that. So since it's such a big plan, it's not like a single annual plan, we thought 10 days was more appropriate, but still fast because the 2020 action plan has to be submitted at the same time, and everything we're doing in 2020 is COVID response. So we don't want to wait too long either with that timeline. So You will see this coming out for public comment January 14th through the 25th. And the draft plan will be posted online for everybody's review. And there'll be a notice in the paper for that. And we'll have something on Facebook and social media so we can get the word out. January 25th, we'll be at City Commission for a public hearing and final approval all in one meeting like we have been doing during the entire pandemic. January 26th through the 28th, sometime within that window, we'll submit the plan to HUD. And we have heard back from HUD that they typically have 45 days to review, but they're trying to get it done in 30 days. So fingers crossed that that is what happens so we can get that money by February and get those COVID activities going. So these, well, first let me back up for a minute. 2020 and 2021 plans, we did the NOFA process to cover both of those years since we're so far behind on the 2020 timeline that we're kind of caught up with the 2021, so they're overlapping. I had mentioned that at the last meeting. And like I said earlier, the 2020 plan is required to be submitted with the 5-year plan. So that has the same timeline that you just saw. But the 2021 plan can't be submitted prior to March 15th. So we'll be back in front of you before that one goes through. And then our notice of funding availability proposal and application process covered the needs of, like I was saying, both 2020, 2021, but also our CV rounds. We had a first and second round of COVID funds for our community development block grant. So all of the proposals that we received, we took into consideration these 3, or technically 4 different pots of money that we have through HUD and applied where we thought activities made the most sense. These are the activities that we'll be proposing with that first timeline that you saw. So in January, we'll be coming to City Commission to request these activities be approved with the 2020 and 5-year plan. So you have heard a lot about housing assistance and the emergency subsistence payments programming that we've been doing with Sendika and presentation partners in housing. So we'll continue to do that work because it's been so ever clear that it is such a huge need by the thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars that are getting spent so quickly, like days. So, and that is intended to keep people from becoming homeless. So it's paying backlogs of rent, and it's paying utilities that are non-city owned, like the CDBG portions will be. And yeah, so that's a really big thing that you'll probably see in 2021 also. And then homeless outreach and harm reduction at the Gladys Ray Shelter. This is something we typically do every year, so we're gonna continue to propose it as we move forward. And then we got a lot of proposals for both single-family homeownership activities and multifamily rental. But in 2020, it seems like the single-family homeownership projects are a little bit more project-ready at this time, during this timeline. So we're thinking for the 2021 funding to do more of the multifamily rental because the funding and their project timelines align just a little bit better. And really, it's only like about 2 months of a difference. So it's not that big of a deal. These are the 2021 potential activities that we're looking at. So again, Sendika presentation partners doing housing assistance and emergency subsistence projects. Same thing with the homeless outreach and harm reduction at Gladys Ray Shelter. I mentioned the multifamily rental. And then these last 3, depending on how much funding we get, because we don't know yet what 2021 is going to provide and whether or not we'll get any more COVID-related funds, we are going to be looking at food-related items. Like the food pantry submitted a pretty good proposal for some work there. The engagement center, there's kind of that pilot program that's coinciding with the quarantine and isolation stuff that's happening at the former PD building that we would like to be a part of. And then homeless shelter capital improvements, possibly at the New Life Center. We saw a pretty good proposal for that. And then one other item that's not on here, but probably maybe wouldn't even be considered until 2022 is the SRO building, trying to determine whether or not what's the best project there and to do something with that building. And then the CDBG-CV COVID allocations. So we have been in front of you, I believe, for the first round, which happened quite a while ago. So that money has already been mostly spent or is being spent. So the partition bunk beds at Gladys Ray Shelter, that's said and done already. And that essentially provided separation panels between the sleeping areas. And then again, the housing assistance and emergency subsistence payments and operations programming that you see there in item 1. And then the second round has just been approved. So that has already been to the city commission once. And we are currently in the process of waiting for the funds just to enter in our HUD coffers, so to say. But everything has been approved for this already for these particular activities that you see up here. So again, more operational support and direct assistance for homeless prevention, diversion, and emergency housing assistance. One thing we added here after hearing from our workers at the Gladys Ray Shelter is to add 2 housing navigators through presentation partners. So they'll actually be located at the former PD building and follow that group wherever they end up, whether it continues to be that building or it's somewhere else down the road. That will help the folks at Gladys Ray Shelter get the people they're working with housed and stay housed a lot better. And then mobile homeless health outreach operations and supply. So during COVID, Homeless Health had to shut that particular area of their operations at Family Health and use it as a isolation triage for patients that were coming in. So folks that typically were experiencing homelessness that visited that place regularly were no longer going there, and they weren't able to find them, and they didn't have the typical places where they'd hang out, like whether that be the library or wherever that might be. So Family Health operates now a mobile homeless health unit, and that's brand new that they just got with COVID-related funds. And this proposes to help them continue to operate that and supply it with all the things that they'll need to keep things going with that particular activity. And then finally, eviction prevention, which I don't think we've seen the peak of evictions yet. I think we're facing that. I think we're going to see a pretty big wave of that in the first quarter of next year based on what we're hearing. So, and this is nationwide based on what we're hearing. I don't see how we might be protected from that here. So eviction prevention through the High Plains Fair Housing Center seems like a pretty logical place to spend money, and the request was only $20,000 from them. So not very much when you consider, if it keeps somebody housed, it's a pretty good deal. And that concludes the program updates. Does anybody have any questions?
Anything for Tia? Don't be shy.
This isn't a question. I would just, if I can, I think Commissioner Strand, Mayor Mahoney, obviously other members of the commission know how hard Tia and Nicole work. But I think the amount of due diligence they are doing during this pandemic to expeditiously get funds to those most in need is absolutely commendable. And I think I just really need to lift up their work and how really over and above they're going to try and meet with external organizations and figure this stuff out really on sometimes an hourly basis. And so, again, I think often we, of course, lift up volunteers and leadership, but I think the city staff, especially Tia and Nicole, from at least my purview, really do deserve some high remarks and praise for their efforts during this. So I just, again, want to publicly acknowledge them and say thanks for your guys' efforts on doing all this work. It's tremendous.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill.
Thomas, that's really considerate of you to say that. And you are reading my mind in a little different regard, but I'm looking at Tia and her report and thinking, what have you been here, 2-3 years now?
A little over 2 years.
A little over 2 years now, and you've really grown into your position, and the results are in front of us. The skill set that you and your team have and bring to the community. So thank you, Thomas, for acknowledging that. I'm very worried. We all need to be worried about our people and how they're holding up, Nicole and Tia and everybody in your department and our public health. It's just an immense strain. And the more we support each other and acknowledge each other, the better. And that just goes a long way. So Thomas Hill, thank you for saying that. Anybody else? Boy, that's a lot going on, isn't it?
The other thing is very surprising is the kind of like, so we're done tongue devil last night where Nicole just stops up and asks for $1 million and the commission gives it to her. So I think that the skill set of this team is excellent because it is a commitment by the city of Fargo, John, to help with the homelessness, and you've been a champion of that. But our team in planning has really stepped up in this pandemic and really done a tremendous job to make sure we take care of the people that are in our community. And I was just impressed with Nicole stepping up yesterday and just here's what we need to do and here's why we need to do it. And by the way, that's $1 million and I expect that out of the commission. So great job by the team. I really appreciate that. And Thomas, you know, around the community as well, as there's some tough times for some people right now. And every community has to step up and take care of those people that are affected by this pandemic and do not have the wherewithal to get through it. But I think our team is top notch and doing a tremendous job. Thank you.
Anybody else with anything for Tia? Okay, thank you, Tia, very, very much. And our condolences too. You had a family death, a death in your family, and our best energies go to all of your family, Tia.
Thank you, everybody, for the nice comments. It's always wonderful hearing that kind of feedback. Gives the whole team a lot of energy. I think it's good to hear.
Okay, we'll go on to item number 5, and this is Nicole with the update, more updates for us.
Yes, thank you, commissioners. And
is this the silver-tongued Nicole today? Sorry, just taking off on the mayor's comments.
I will say thanks to our administration team as well for supporting this work and helping us navigate the complexities of emergency management services. I was talking to Jessica Thomason, who now works at the state of North Dakota, and she does think the partnership with emergency management in tandem with all the people in our community doing this work might just help us get over that edge of homelessness and prevention of homelessness and responding in a full way. And we also are very thankful, when we compare our city's community development divisions, you compare the city of Fargo's community development division to our other jurisdictions, and the not that we have enough staff, but that we have more staff than our peers, and that we have access to funds that other communities do not have access to just based on our large population. And so with that comes some responsibility to stand up and help lead in that community discussion when there's a gap in resources and when there's a gap. So that's what we've been hunting for this year as a response to COVID, is where are the gaps and how can we plug them to move the discussion forward. And this is in combination with Michael Redlinger. I wanted to just kind of give you a quick update on where some of our expenditures have been going. A lot of it is just a recap on what Tia just mentioned. And as a point on that 5-year plan, moving forward, that 5-year plan, as you know, is a guiding document for all of our future activities for the next now 4 years. And we do think the recovery, while Fargo isn't as hit as it impacted as much as the rest of the community or the rest of the country is in terms of economically, we do recognize as we peel back the onion layers of the complexity of our housing programs and the needs for housing, especially vulnerable populations, and where those gaps are. So one of them is our staff is working very closely to kind of map out the housing assistance program. All of the partners in our community related to rental assistance, food, shelter, transportation, all of those things that would constrain someone from being able to quarantine safely and isolate safely. We've been putting most of our efforts on that for COVID, and it happens to be the same partners we work with CDBG, so we had kind of access to those relationships. So over the course of this last 6 months, we've basically expended $3.5 million on those activities, and in partnership with public health. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about is the engagement center and the homelessness. And again, thanks for the advocacy in downtown and our partners there, and with the police department and Gladys Ray, we've been able to set up that quarantine and isolation for I think it's approximately 15 members of our community that are unsheltered, that need quarantine and isolation. They're in full operations effective November. And we also have a partnership with Clay County and Bison Plains Motel, and they are partnering to help if people present with COVID or needing quarantine or isolation needs at the YWCA or at Churches United Micah's Mission. We have a partnership there. We're also supporting even like the details like Ready Wheels as the transportation between shelters or the transportation between hospital and shelter or shelter and to other shelter. So we're driving our finance team a little crazy. We probably have, 10 to 12 new subrecipient agreements with all of these agencies as we administer that $3.5 million related to the rental assistance and the quarantine and isolation. So I'd be glad to answer any questions. And I know Michael and Kent have been tracking what makes this emergency especially hard to manage is that there's pools of funds becoming available at a federal level and in a private foundation level and in lots of different places. And so as we track between FEMA, emergency services grants, HUD, CDBG, the state's CARES Act, our local CARES Act allocation, there's a lot of moving buckets. And maybe Michael might want to speak a little bit more about what he's been presenting to the City Commission as he and Jim Gilmore have been tracking a couple other data points.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, and I'll just very briefly state, and to support what Nicole said, it is a very, very complex funding picture in that it is sourced from a variety of different federal, state, and foundation buckets. But what we're doing is just reporting out at a strategic level what some of these resources will be allocated to. So in the areas of public health, in the areas of public safety, and then this our community development needs, we're just trying to kind of keep things all together and kind of wrapped up in a coherent package. But we also don't know for sure that we are done with CARES in 2021. We think that there could be some additional allocations that will occur. And so you're seeing a lot of that discussion right now take place in Washington, D.C. about what the future of CARES will look like, what the future of the Families First Coronavirus Relief Act will look like as well in 21. So we have our ear to the rail. We'll continue to follow that and track that. But I guess I'll leave it at that, but I'm happy to answer any questions that individuals would have from the committee.
Okay, we'll go to the members of the committee. Feedback or questions for Nicole or Michael? No?
Maybe
okay, thank you, Nicole.
Maybe a point to that real quick. Unfortunately, I'm not really well organized with my thoughts. That's part of the hazards of this work right now. But I think right now, as Michael said, there's bills being considered right now in Congress and that are pointing, right now, all the right things are being pointed to in terms of that eviction moratorium extending through 2021. When I looked at the last bill that had a lot of good measures in there that would help us continue this work. Another kind of interesting point that our staff are able to do by digging into this extra layer of rental assistance, we're learning that there's only over 50 applications a day coming in to Senka and presentation partners seeking rental assistance. The arrears for this last year are in the neighborhoods of $2,000, $4,000, $6,000. On average, we're paying about $1,500 a month. But all of this debt, if someone were evicted or to hold the debt, means they can't get future housing. And so that is our biggest concern. And the number of cases that are coming in front of us as we look into the details of these are really mind-blowing. And at some point, we look forward to getting a pause so we can collect this information and data so you can hear some of those anecdotes firsthand. Senka and presentation partners, the members of that staff that we've been working with have just been fantastic. And the complexity of these unique cases and household cases are really fascinating. And it shows, never seeks to amaze me, the fragility of poverty and the system of poverty and how people sustain themselves through that. And I guess it's another understanding of why this work is so important, because as I mentioned to our administration, if we don't stand up, who will, and who's leading this? And all of our nonprofits are at a at their limits and capacity to be able to provide any more services than they already are. So it's just showing the weakness. COVID just exposed all of that weakness that much more so.
And then in a response, we get to develop our strengths, which you're showing us as well. Nicole, I have a question as long as you're on that topic of evictions and tenants and landlords. How is it going with the landlords? Are they embracing this program, or do they know about it, or does it usually get initiated from the tenant at risk? Or are the landlords now realizing this is there to help their tenants from being evicted? I'm just curious how that unfolds.
That's a fascinating question. So when we dug into, and I'll just say our ask to the Community Development Committee, as you connect with your resources and network, to let us know what you're hearing. And that's exactly what happened in unfolding this landlord-tenant program. My phone was ringing. I was on the phone 8 hours a day from smaller nonprofits that serve as that emergency relief. So if 211 can't address their needs, people and First Link, people then show up where their friends, peers, et cetera, have also received help. So that might be the front doors of City Hall, that might be Win Liberia, that might be the Federation Family of Community Uplift. There's all sorts of nonprofits out there that are maybe small in operation, but are very nimble. And Thomas and I have had lots of conversations about how to support these folks, as well as understand where the system is failing. Where we learned in 211 is they didn't have the resources and access to information to get them to the right place. And unfortunately, the other thing we've learned is the HUD program, as much as I love HUD, sarcastically, the barriers to HUD sheltering is insurmountable for most people, for probably 70 to 80% of the people needing assistance right now. And so through that access to the CARES money, and understanding the power of the CDC moratorium eviction, we were then able to partner, and we took a piece, Senca took a piece, and Presentation Partners took a piece. I have 3 full-time staff members working on rental assistance to landlords right now. We picked that up in November 10th and have been working on it full-time for the last until December 31st. And basically cold calling landlords, working with the rental assistance program. They provide us our ledgers. They have the responsibility of connecting with their tenants. And then the landlords have the responsibility to certifying those tenants indeed live there. And so trying to get the landlords to have some skin in the game as part of it, because obviously they want to make their finances whole as well. So many of the landlords we've talked about didn't even know it existed. They knew the moratorium existed, but they were looking for relief mechanisms. And so that's where we were able to step up.
That's really, really interesting and update to Nicole. Anybody else have anything for Nicole on this topic at all? Any questions? Anybody? My last comment to you, Nicole, is one more time, take care of yourself and your people and your department and everybody that's putting it all on the line. Keep your batteries charged. Watch out for each other. This is a long road to hoe, and we just can't thank you all enough for the yeoman's effort you're putting forward. So thank you, and stay well.
Thank you, and thanks for always supporting our work.
Well, it goes both ways. We wouldn't be very effective without our capable staff and departments. Okay, item number 6, Land Development Code and Core Neighborhood Plan update from Aaron Nelson.
All right, thank you, and good afternoon. I'll try and keep this pretty brief and leave some time for questions, but I'm here today just to provide a brief update on the city's core neighborhoods master plan. This is an informational item and no action is being requested. So to kick things off, in terms of a quick refresher, maybe the core neighborhoods master plan seeks to identify and understand the primary issues that affect the city's oldest neighborhoods, and to develop a comprehensive strategy for the city, partner agencies, and residents to address those key issues. As many of you will recall, this process initiated in the spring of 2019, which included a joint meeting of the Planning Commission and Community Development Committee on May 15th, 2019. And work on the plan itself started at the beginning of 2020 with the establishment of 4 steering committees, which are really driving the development of this plan here. 3 of the committees are made up of almost entirely of neighborhood representatives from the study area here, and there's also one overarching project steering committee, which several of you on the Community Development Committee also serve on. The project itself took place in 3 phases. The first phase of this project took place in the early spring of 2020 and focused on the identification of those key issues. Involved a lot of analysis of data, conversations with neighborhood representatives, community members, public survey, and other discussions. Once the main issues came into focus, the second phase of this project revolved around the development of some strategies and some shared vision for the future of each of these neighborhoods. And ultimately the development of a toolkit, which is just a suite of different recommendations that are all kind of geared towards addressing those key issues. The third and final phase of this project is where things sit today. This basically just involves the pulling all this information together into one final document, which is in your packet here today. And so right now the project is wrapping up in regards to coming up with a finalized version of the Core Neighborhood Master Plan document itself. And so I'll just want to touch really briefly on the document itself. It's broken up into 5 parts here. Hopefully some of you have had a chance to read through that prior to today. But I'll just point out some maybe highlights here as you find time to read through this document here. The 5 parts are shown on the table of contents here. They're also outlined in the cover memo included in your packet. But the first thing I wanted to touch on here is just the part 1, which outlines the key issues that came to light throughout this process. One of the things that you'll note when you read the document is that the issues that were identified are broken up into 2 categories: priority issues and other key issues. And the priority issues are the main issues that this plan is mainly focused on and seeks to address. The other thing I wanted to point out here in regards to part 1 of the document, the key issues, is that really the primary issue of disinvestment in residential property was identified as being really at the heart of most of these issues. That's what this graphic from the plan here tries to illustrate. And so as a result, you'll see that most of the tools in the toolkit are really geared in one way or another at improving investment in residents within the core neighborhoods. The other section of the plan that I wanted to quickly highlight here today is part 4, which includes the core neighborhoods toolkit. And the toolkit is just the terminology the plan uses for the set of recommendations that try to address these issues. The toolkit itself is broken up into 5 different categories here. Within each of those categories, there's kind of a similar structure to the plan where it identifies the problems that that the toolkit is trying to solve, identifies some of the current practices and conditions that are in place today or in existence today, and then it goes on to suggest some changes to make in order to address those issues and some action steps associated with each of those recommendations there. And then lastly, all of this is summarized on the last page of the part 4 toolkit here with this implementation table, if you will. And don't worry about reading this right here, but really the thing that I wanted to highlight here is that all of these recommendations, the table here just illustrates kind of a phased approach to implementation of the recommendations. And so you'll see all of the recommendations here in this table. They're broken out into short-term, medium-term, and long-term recommendations. And then along with that, there are kind of 5 key first steps that the plan starts to identify as kind of being the most important first steps as we transition from finalizing the plan to the implementation of the plan itself. And so with that, again, that's kind of where we are right now. The plan itself is wrapping up. The steering committee and sub-area committees are holding their last round of meetings here this week. And so some of the next steps, we certainly want to highlight that the work does not stop with the finalization of the plan here. In many ways, some of the work is just beginning. And so some of the next steps, as we see them anyway at this point, these are all pretty amorphic right now. But one of the aspects is education and outreach. beginning in January 2021 and continuing as needed. That'll be a big component, is just spreading the word about this plan, what key issues were identified, having conversations with some of our partner stakeholders and citizens as they relate to different aspects of the implementation strategies. One of the things that we're looking to do is hold a joint meeting in mid to late January. We would anticipate this would involve a discussion with the City Commission, Planning Commission, Community Development Committee, as well as the project steering committee members to start to talk about what that implementation starts to look like. Another aspects of the next steps here is again, building on that education and some additional discussion with stakeholders and broadening that discussion more generally will be to start to put together a more detailed implementation strategy that's really custom tailored to the realities of city budgets, capacity, with everything going on right now. Those all need to be factored into discussions on what do these next steps look like into 2021. Once we kind of have a better picture and things start coming into focus with some strategy for implementation, that's the point in time where we'd likely bring the plan document to the City Commission for their final review and adoption. Likely in late winter, early spring is kind of a general timeline that we have in mind right now. And then once that happens, obviously we could take the steps towards implementation, assuming City Commission approval. So that kind of lays out kind of everything that we've done, that the planning team has done so far to date, and what some of the next steps look like in the coming months. So we definitely see the Community Development Committee as being a partner in these next steps. And so I think with that, I'll stop talking and be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Aaron. Anybody in the commission committee feedback? Mayor Mahoney?
Aaron, we have some CARES Act money that we've never had before. The city of Fargo has got some funding that we've not had before. Early on, when you did the core neighborhood study, Commissioner Strand had talked to me about if we'd have something like the land grant, or if we had something, a funding, a grant mechanism to fix up houses, or improve the stock in our neighborhoods, or improve certain parts of the neighborhood. If you could work in your master plan, let's say you had $2 million, what would you do with it?
So I think the chart here is really telling. As you look at these recommendations, I would say that not all recommendations are considered equal, and so I think some of these recommendations, and I think the consulting firm would echo this. Fargo is in a relatively good spot compared to a lot of the communities that our professional consulting team has worked in. And so I think what they would tell you is that reinvestment in housing in strategic locations is probably one key element, and then the code enforcement. They see kind of the to use an analogy, just regular oil changes in your car, the upkeep, making sure that we stay ahead of the curve is probably where the city of Fargo would get the biggest bang for our buck in that regard.
And that's what I want you to think about, is how do we get the biggest bang for our buck? And John and I have talked before, we thought maybe you could have $500,000 into that, but I want you to strategize $2 million. If you had $2 million, what would you do with it? And we got affordable housing funding. We just got word from the state. Now we have 3 units that were approved in the city of Fargo. There's another unit in West Fargo. In affordable housing, we're going to have 159 units brought on board into our community. That's fantastic. That's the best I've heard for a long time. But I want us on the core neighborhoods think about what would be different. And last evening, we approved people rehabbing their house. We had like 20 to 24 people that have rehabbed their house and got a tax break. So what are different mechanisms in which we can incentivize people keeping their neighborhoods up, keeping their housing stock up, and or how can we help the people that have fallen off and just can't do that? So I just want to use a little imagination, because typically, as Nicole would come to me, there's just no funding, or there's just no anything in this area, this bucket, that we can do anything with. But if we thought about it and said, well, maybe we could pull $2 million out and put it to that stock of all the 8 core neighborhoods and see what we could come up with, incentivizing some growth development or whatever it needs to be done. And Commissioner Strand has often asked that too, is sometimes we have to think what motivates people to get to the next step. So I would hope out of the final draft we would have some thought process into that. And John, I think that that's a good starting point. I do think we may have some money to put into that budget for 2021.
$2 million. Let's make that a matter of the record. Nicole, have you already convinced him of this? That's Mayor. Thank you for contributing that.
You can only talk in millions now, is what I learned.
So we have a target of breathing life into that with his suggestion there. It'll be funded. We hope. Okay. Any other feedback for Aaron? Follow-up questions, comments? Anybody? Candy Nixon, are you part of this process?
Yes, I have been part of the meetings, and appreciate. I think we've been appreciative of the output, the conversations, and appreciate Aaron's efforts on it. So, yeah, it's exciting to see where it's come.
Okay. Anybody else?
Hey, John Gunkelman.
Okay.
I just want to say it's the end of the year, and I think thanks have to be given to a lot of people, because in all my years on the Planning Commission and to see what we've got going right now between the Land Development Code, the Core Neighborhood Study, being part of the Cass Clay Community Land Development Trust, there's a lot of good things going on in Fargo, and thank you to the mayor and the commissioners. But there's no question that the planning department has their work cut out for them in the years to come. As the land development code will probably be possibly 3 to 5 year adventure, and it's just fun to see a lot of the things that, when we at our planning commission meetings, a lot of the things revolve around the land development code and the core neighborhood. Related to that, the issues that Ken brings to us from the Roosevelt neighborhood and some of the other neighborhoods, I think there's a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel that as a community, we're coming together to solve a lot of issues that I think can only make Fargo a better place to live.
Thank you, John Gunkelman. Anybody else? I have a question for Sam. Were you going to speak up there? Oh, okay. It was reported in the media this week that we've had a 20% increase in home valuations in 4 years. Is that correct? 20% increase in house values in I thought I read that in the media just in the last day or so on the front page. But either way, we do have escalating house values. So this issue relative to single family homes versus renting and affordability and access to housing and getting into housing, it's just really ripe right now. Like you've all mentioned, this is a national issue. Tia said, this is not just local, but it's national. But if
John, your 20%, John Gunkelman can confirm this, your 20% might be the lumber cost of the increased home values has been roughly 20%. I think overall values of a homes is still in the single digit right now.
John, do you have any insight on this, Gunkelman?
Yeah, the cost of lumber, actually, it had gone up roughly 27%. It dropped a little bit, and then I just saw a blurb the other day or yesterday that it's creeping up again. So some of that has to do with, a good chunk of that has to do with the COVID issues and plants being shut down, started up again, and just had a comment today made that just to show people what happened this year is housing across the United States is up 11% over last year, even with the COVID. So, I mean, it's from the demand is there. I mean, the interest rates were good. plus the number of starts where ground hasn't even been broken is at a record level across the country. So from a housing perspective, it's been a very, very good year.
These are good issues for us to keep an eye on, and I believe we've also recently seen some shifting in the rental capacities in town, where we have been operating at 8, 9, 10% vacancy rates. I think it's 5 something now. So that will affect our community as well, to have way fewer vacancies, way fewer affordable rental or affordable single-family homes. We've got our work cut out for us in the housing front for sure. Okay, anybody else with anything for Aaron? We're getting off track a little bit, but anybody else have questions, comments? Okay, we'll continue on to any announcements for the meetings. Nicole?
Staff does not have any,
Okay.
but there might be members on the community that do.
Let's do a roundtable. Anybody have anything for the good of the order? Melissa, anything downtown?
Well, if you have not checked it out, we have the holiday headquarters, which is in the old Swanson Health location. That's something that's been well received by our community. We're offering gift wrapping and decentralized events and supporting some local vendors who needed somewhere to go to sell their holiday product. So please check it out. We're open till Saturday. And then also we're working on activating some of the empty storefronts along Broadway with past holiday festive props and things. So stay tuned.
Great, thank you, Melissa. Mark Puppy, anything from Home Builders?
See, John,
I'd
one
like to
question.
congratulate Kim Hochhalter is now will be the new president of the Home Builders Association. They'll be exciting as all the changes coming down the pipe will be, but we're excited to have Kim at the realm of that. And also the Career Workforce Academy will be a big item in the upcoming session. Home Builders is paying close attention to that. And of course, investment from the local community is really important. You know, if we're going to have all the development and the employees come to town, well, we need people who are trained. So please keep the Career Workforce Academy in mind. And hbafm.com is your place to check this out.
Great, thank you, Mark. Mayor, did you?
Oh, I just wanted to ask Melissa, you know, I saw Josie's article on small businesses and was curious, when I'm downtown, it seems like there's more activity. Are we getting people out there? Are they out shopping? It looks like Broadway Square is a huge success. It looks to me, at least, that it's activated in the downtown area. Are those merchants getting people coming through?
I think we've finally seen some of the traffic increase over the last week. So there again, it's just getting that consumer confidence to come downtown and visit and support local. So we are finally seeing some traction. The DCP does plan on sending out a member survey to kind of track, basically just get a pulse of their business compared to last year. We do it every year. So it'll be interesting to see how we compare traffic and, you know, just promotion and what they need from our community and things like that. So I'm finally hearing some positive numbers from our businesses from last week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Let's just continue around the table. Any of our public members at large, Linda or Sam, have anything to contribute? Or okay, Matthew Pike, anything from Fargo Housing Authority?
Commissioner Strand, thank you. No, I would say just ending this year, I would say thanks to you, to the mayor, to everyone on this committee. It's been a real pleasure. But I want to echo Tom's comments, specifically with regard to Nicole, Tia, Mark Johnson, Karen Flom. I mean, that entire staff have just been going above and beyond. And I just want to echo those comments again with so much gratitude to that entire team, but really to everybody at City Hall and their excellent work this year. It's just been extraordinary to just be a part of that, because I still feel like I'm new to this community, and I am grateful to all of you for all your hard work. So thank you.
We appreciate your work as well and everything your people do.
Matt, do you have progress to report on us on the high rise? Just curious on the high rise, since John's letting us ask questions.
Sure. Yeah. So we finished up the RFP process, and we got 3 different respondents. Those are currently under review. Stay tuned, I guess. Our commission meets later this week, and I'd love to sort of share with you where that heads, and and what result we get after that meeting on Friday for sure.
Okay, and if I recall, Michael Redlinger's helping you with that process as well, going through bids and looking at that. Any other announcements around the table? Did I miss anybody? All righty, continuing on with our agenda, you'll see we have your calendar ahead of you for meetings. We're going to continue scheduling the 3rd Tuesday of each month. We're trying to be, as you know, flexible to work with our staff, being as they've been really put on task with COVID, that we will continue meeting when there's pressing work to do. I'm trying real hard not to throw them curveballs and surprises and spin them with other topics, because that's my nature, but I know they have their hands full, and that's their highest priority. Staff report, Nicole, did anything you'd like to touch base on the printout staff report, or just make note of them for the record?
Just for the record, we have some potential, 2 housing, or I should say 2 research projects that we have going on. We have a little update for you in the staff report. Basically, we're putting those on hold just a little bit until we have a breather. I think at the end of December, as we go into the new year, as we understand those funding, we'll have an opportunity to pick those research projects back up.
Okay.
So we look forward to, there's an immense amount of data out there.
Thank you, Nicole. Anybody else have anything for the good of the order at all? Lastly, it goes without saying to thank you all for your public service, for your work in our community, for the role you play in making Fargo the great city that it is. Thank you to our staff and our people who deliver tirelessly, ongoing, all the time, when the barriers are just immense and the challenges. So, we just can't thank you all enough. And lastly is take care of yourselves and each other. We have a long ways to go. So stay well, watch out for your people, watch out for yourselves, and make that the highest priority so that you can continue delivering as you do and we're used to. Mayor, any final word?
I think you had the great words, John. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We'll be convening again in January. Thank you.
Thank you.